let me tell you something. Too many of us are sitting still, holding back, waiting for the right moment, the right skill, the right resources, the right feeling before we move. We've convinced ourselves that unless we check every box, unless we feel completely ready, unless we look like the people we admire, God must not be calling us. But here's the truth that shatters every excuse we've been hiding behind. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And if you can let that sink deep into your spirit, it'll change the way you see everything. Look through the history of people God used, and you'll see a pattern. They were broken, overlooked, underestimated. Moses had a stutter and doubted himself. David was a shepherd boy passed over by his own father. Esther was an orphan. Peter was impulsive and loudmouthed. Paul persecuted Christians before he became one of the most powerful voices for the gospel. So if you're sitting there thinking you're not enough, you don't have what it takes. You've made too many mistakes. Understand you're in good company. You're exactly the kind of person God has a habit of using. See, we think calling is about credentials, about being polished, about perfection. But calling is about surrender. It's about saying yes, even when you feel unworthy. God isn't waiting on your ransom. He's waiting on your obedience, because when he calls you, he's not asking for your perfection. He's asking for your trust. He already knows who you are, where you've been, what you've done. And still he says, I want you. That's not a mistake. That's purpose. We live in a culture that says you have to prove yourself to be worthy of the spotlight, to be worthy influence, to be worthy of being chosen. But the kingdom works differently. God chooses the least likely, the overlooked, the brokenhearted, the flawed. Because when they rise, nobody can say it was by their own strength. When they rise, it's clear that God had his hand on them. It's clear that grace was the engine behind their success. Some of us are paralyzed by comparison, measuring our gifts against someone else's calling. But let me tell you, what God placed in you doesn't need to look like what's in them. Your anointing wasn't designed to copy someone else's. And your calling isn't about impressing people. It's about impacting lives. You don't have to talk like them. You don't have to walk like them. You don't need the same education, the same platform, or the same network. If God put something in your spirit, then he already wired you with everything you need to begin. Now, don't get it twisted. He may call you before you're ready, but he will not leave you unprepared. When God calls you, he takes on the responsibility of equipping you. That means as you move, he adds. As you step, he strengthens. As you speak, he fills your mouth. But none of that happens until you start walking. God blesses movement. He blesses boldness. He blesses obedience. But we've let fear speak louder than faith. We hear the call, but we delay. We hesitate. We tell ourselves, let me get this right first. Let me fix this flaw first. Let me wait until I feel more confident. But calling rarely shows up with comfort. God's calling will stretch you. It'll scare you. It'll challenge everything you believe about yourself. That's the point. Because if it didn't, you wouldn't need him. And that's the key he wants you to need. He wants you to depend on him. Because your calling was never meant to be carried by your own strength. When you're saying yes to God, you're saying yes to divine assistance. You're saying yes to grace that lifts, grace that covers, grace that builds, grace that opens doors no man can shut. You may feel small. You may feel inadequate. But the size of your feeling does not determine the size of your calling. Some of the most powerful callings start in the quiet, with trembling hands, with uncertain hearts. And God meets you right there. He steps into the middle of your insecurity and says, I can use that. He looks at your weakness and says, that's where my strength will show up. He sees your brokenness and says, that's the vessel I want. So don't count yourself out because of what you lack. Don't disqualify yourself from what God has already qualified you for. If he called you, that's all the confirmation you need. He doesn't ask, Are you enough? He declares, I am enough through you. That's where your power lies, not in who you are, but in who called you. And if God called you, trust that he's going to see it through, no matter what you think you lack. Let's be real. There are going to be times in your life when nothing makes sense. You'll look around and wonder, why now? Why this? Why me? You'll try to draw straight lines through crooked seasons, but no matter how hard you try to understand it, things just won't add up. And that's where many people lose their way. That's where doubt creeps in. That's where faith starts to feel foolish. But if you're going to walk in your calling, if you're going to trust the one who gave you the assignment, you've got to understand something deep in your bones. The path won't always make sense, but it's always purposeful. We're conditioned to believe that purpose should feel clear, like a clean roadmap. That if God is in it, it'll all flow, all line up, all make sense. But that's not how purpose works. That's not how calling unfolds. God doesn't owe us a blueprint. He gives us the next step. And the truth is, some of your most meaningful breakthroughs won't happen in clarity. They'll happen in confusion. They'll come in the moments where nothing seems to be going according to plan, but somehow you're still standing. Somehow you're still moving. Somehow something inside you refuses to give up because God doesn't need you to understand the path. He needs you to trust him on it. He doesn't promise it'll be easy. He doesn't promise it'll make sense. What he promises is that it's working for your good. Good. That good might not feel good in the moment. That good might come with pain, with delays, with doors that slam shut and prayers that go unanswered, at least from your perspective. But what feels like a detour is often divine direction. What looks like rejection is sometimes redirection. And what you call confusion, God calls construction. He's building something in you that you can't even see yet. So yeah, you'll face some seasons that don't match your expectations. You'll pray and it'll feel like heaven went silent. You'll try to move forward and feel like you're walking in circles, but don't be fooled by how it looks. There is a purpose behind every pause, a lesson in every loss, a strategy in every setback. God is not random. He's not chaotic. He's intentional. And he wastes nothing. Not your pain, not your waiting, not your confusion. You've got to stop measuring your purpose by how smooth the road is. Some of the most powerful people in the world didn't arrive at their destiny by walking on sunshine. They were shaped in the shadows. They were developed in the dark. And the moment they tried to give up was the moment right before the shift. See, what you think is the end of the road is often just the bend in the journey. But if you stop walking because it doesn't make sense, you'll never find out what was waiting around the corner. Faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting even when the questions multiply. It's about saying, God, I don't know where this is leading, but I trust you're leading me. And that kind of faith is what separates the called from the chosen. Anybody can believe when everything's going well, but can you believe when you've been laid off? Can you believe when the door closes? Can you believe when your prayers seem to echo in silence? Because that's where the real trust is built. That's where character is formed. That's where purpose begins to rise. Some of you are walking through something right now that doesn't make any sense. And you've been trying to figure it out, trying to pray it away, trying to rewind or fast forward. But what if this moment, as uncomfortable as it is exactly where you're meant to be? What if the delay is actually protection? What if the frustration is producing strength? What if the uncertainty is building a deeper dependence on God than you've ever had before? We don't like to hear that. We want progress without process. We want calling without crushing. But that's not how growth works. God will break you before he builds you. He'll humble you before he elevates you. Because if you don't learn how to trust him in the fog, you'll fall apart in the light. And the weight of the blessing he has for you requires the strength he's building in you right now. So don't panic just because the path doesn't make sense. Don't let the unfamiliar trick you into turning back. You're not lost. You're led. You're not forgotten. You're being formed. Even when it feels like you're going nowhere, God is doing more behind the scenes than you can see with your natural eyes. And that's the beauty of trusting Him. You don't have to see the whole picture to believe in the artist. You just have to keep walking, keep trusting, keep believing that every step, every struggle, every silent night, it all matters. It's all part of the plan, even when it doesn't make sense, especially when it doesn't make sense. Faith isn't the absence of fear. It's not the absence of doubt. It's not standing on a mountaintop with every answer in your hand. Faith is what shows up when nothing makes sense, but you move anyway. It's what carries you forward when your knees are shaking, when the questions outnumber the answers, when your heart is screaming, wait, but something deeper whispers, go. That's faith, not confidence in yourself, but confidence in the one who called you. It's movement even in mystery. It's obedience without full understanding. See, too many people are waiting for certainty before they move, waiting for every detail to be spelled out, waiting until they feel brave, until they feel qualified, until someone gives them permission. But that's not how faith works. If you could see the whole picture, it wouldn't require faith. If everything made sense before you started, you wouldn't need trust. God calls us into the unknown on purpose, not to confuse us, but to reveal Himself in ways that comfort never could. That uncomfortable space where you don't know how it's going to turn out. That's where faith breathes. That's where real relationship with God begins. Because it's easy to believe when the doors are wide open and the signs are obvious. But what about when it's quiet? What about when next step looks risky and your resources are low and your confidence is shaken? That's when faith stands up. That's when faith says, I may not feel ready, but I trust the one who's leading me. The greatest moments in your life won't come when you feel most certain. They'll come when you step forward anyway. Think about it. If Abraham waited until he knew where he was going, he would have missed the journey that birthed a nation. If Noah waited for a weather forecast, the ark would never have been built. If Mary had waited for public approval, she would have missed carrying the promise inside her. Faith means moving even when you're unsure, especially when you're unsure, because that's when it matters most. But let's be real, uncertainty is uncomfortable. We want a safety net. We want guarantees. We want a backup plan. But God often strips that away, so you'll stop relying on what you can control and start depending on Him. He allows discomfort, so you lean not on your own understanding, but on His wisdom. He lets the waters rise, not to drown you, but to teach you that He walks on waves. And when you take that first step, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, He meets you right there, not before the step, not at the end of the road. Right there in the movement. Some of you have been delaying your destiny because you're waiting to feel ready. You're waiting for someone to tell you've got what it takes, but your feelings will lie to you. Your fear will lie to you. And if you let them lead, you'll stay stuck in a season God already gave you the green light to leave. Faith isn't about feeling ready. It's about being willing to trust, willing to stretch, willing to walk even if your path is dimly lit. It's okay to be unsure. It's okay to be scared. You can feel all of that and still move, still build, still speak, still show up. Don't confuse fear with failure. Sometimes fear is just a sign you're stepping into something greater than yourself. And that's where God does His best work, in the deep end. When you've left the shore and you can't touch the bottom anymore, that's when His strength becomes your lifeline. And the truth is, you won't always get it right. You may stumble. You may question. You may even fall. But movement is still better than paralysis. God can correct a moving heart. He can realign a willing spirit, but He can't steer what refuses to move. Some of the greatest lessons you'll learn won't come from perfect choices, but from bold steps taken with imperfect faith. You'll grow through what you go through. And sometimes the growth is in the going. So stop waiting for the fear to disappear. Stop waiting for full clarity before you commit. That call on your life didn't come with a detailed itinerary because God isn't trying to hand you control. He's inviting you into trust. He's saying, if you'll just move, I'll meet you. That's the kind of faith that changes lives, the kind that builds legacies, the kind that makes history, not faith that knows it all, but faith that goes anyway. Your calling isn't just about you. It's bigger than you. That might be hard to grasp when you're tired, when you're discouraged, when you're wondering why the weight feels so heavy. But calling comes with responsibility, not just to yourself, but to others who are tied to your obedience. You're not walking this road alone. You never were. And what God placed inside of you was never meant to stay inside of you. It was meant to reach, to lift, to serve, to break chains, not just for your freedom, but for someone else's. We live in a world that tells us to chase success for ourselves. Get yours, protect your peace, build your platform, and sure, there's wisdom in stewardship and boundaries, but when God places a calling on your life, it's not just so you can rise. It's so others can rise because of what you carried. It's so your story becomes someone's survival guide. It's so your healing gives someone else permission to believe they can be whole too. What you've overcome was never just for your benefit. It's the blueprint someone else is praying for. Seed. We think of calling as something glamorous, something grand, something shiny and recognized. But real calling, God's kind of calling, usually starts in the hidden places. It starts in the quiet obedience, in the moments nobody claps for, in the sacrifices that don't make it to Instagram. It starts when you choose to say yes, not because it's easy, but because you know someone else's breakthrough is waiting on the other side. Because you know your gift is a vessel, and vessels weren't made to hoard. They were made to pour. When God calls you, he's not just thinking about your life. He's thinking about the ripple effect. He's thinking about the people your life will touch, the lives your story will unlock, the chains your courage will break. And if you only think about calling through the lens of what you'll want, you'll miss the weight and the wonder of what God wants to do through you. That, yes, you're wrestling with. It matters. That step you've been scared to take. Someone is waiting for it. Someone is waiting for you to rise. Because your obedience will give them the language to hope again. Your perseverance will give them a reason to keep pushing. And your light, no matter how dim it feels right now, will be the guide someone else needs in their darkness. Don't let the pressure of perfection convince you that you're not ready. Don't let the lie that says, I'm not enough, keep you silent. You don't have to be perfect to make an impact. You just have to be willing. God will use your vulnerability. He will use your scars. He will use the very things you try to hide, because what embarrassed you may be the very thing that sets someone else free. There's someone out there who needs to know they're not alone. And they'll only know that when you step into your calling without shame. It's easy to think someone else can do it better. Someone else is more gifted. Someone else has more reach. But God didn't give them your voice. He gave it to you. He didn't give them your journey. He entrusted it to you. So don't compare callings. Don't minimize what you carry just because it doesn't look like theirs. There's a specific assignment on your life that only you can fulfill. And if you don't walk in it, the world misses something powerful. Not because God won't raise someone else, but because there is something unique about how you were designed to deliver it. Sometimes you'll feel like giving up, like the burden is too much, like the progress is too slow. But in those moments, remember, it's not just about you. You're building something that outlives you. You're building something that changes atmospheres, that shifts bloodlines, that rewrites history. And that kind of building takes grit. It takes patience. It takes fire, but it's worth it. Because when you realize your calling is about more than your comfort, when you understand that people are connected to your faithfulness, you stop moving just for yourself and you start moving for the ones coming after you. You may never know the full impact of your highs. You may never meet the people who are touched by your words, your work, your witness. But just because you can't see them doesn't mean they aren't watching. Just because they haven't told you doesn't mean you haven't changed their life. Sometimes the biggest seeds you plant are the ones that grow in silence. But they grow, and your job isn't to control the harvest. It's to keep showing up, to keep watering, to keep trusting that your calling is working in ways you can't imagine. So don't shrink. Don't pull back. Don't disqualify yourself because the journey feels overwhelming. Remember, this isn't just about you. It's about what God is building through you for generations you may never see, for souls you'll never meet, for purposes far greater than your own. And that should give you strength even on your hardest days. So when you walk out of here, walk differently. Walk like you know you're called. Not perfect, not always ready, but chosen. Chosen by a God who sees beyond your limits and calls out your purpose anyway. Don't wait to feel confident. Don't wait until it all makes sense. Move when it's messy. Trust when it's unclear. Say yes, even when your voice shakes, because your calling is not about being qualified. It's about being willing. It's not about comfort. It's about purpose. And it's not just about you. It's about what God wants to do through you. So keep believing, keep moving, even if you don't know where the road leads. Because when you trust in God's calling on your life, you're not just stepping into your future. You're opening doors for others. You're breaking generational cycles, and you're becoming the answer to a prayer someone else hasn't even prayed yet. You were called. Act like it.